Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conflict and War Studies. This is your host, Rabia. Today, we'll analyze the latest developments in Europe, focusing on mainly the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the evolving diplomatic maneuvers around it. To help us navigate this complex landscape, we are joined once again by retired Brigadier General Ufuk Uras. Welcome, General.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. In our previous episode, we ended with a note of cautious optimism, basically, hoping that dialogue between world leaders might pave the way toward a political solution. But this week, that hope took a hit with the cancellation of the meeting in Budapest, and that meeting was between President Trump and President Putin. General, what led to this cancellation, and how do you interpret the strategic approaches of the US, EU, Ukraine, I don't know, Russia in general, in this context?
So I think, first of all, the European leaders' attitude led to the cancellation of this meeting. The Europe is now in the process of developing a 12-point peace plan. They call it as a peace plan, but in my opinion, it is a coercion plan. They want to coerce Russia for ceasefire. And the key problem is about the declaration of ceasefire. According to Europeans, Russia should immediately and unconditionally stop fighting. They want to talk after a ceasefire is implemented or activated. Russian position is totally different. Russia does not want to agree on an immediate ceasefire. Russia thinks that if a ceasefire is declared, Ukraine will use this opportunity to replenish its forces and to prepare for a major attack because the time will provide Ukraine to receive support from Western countries. And this
So
is
we don't
the
see, so we don't see a genuine alignment between the countries, but
yes.
instead, like we see that like the divisions within the Western Alliance actually deepening.
For President Trump, as far as I can see, this was not the main issue. I mean, he was also in favor of an immediate ceasefire, but Russia wants first to talk on the conditions of the possible peace process. For some main conditions. I mean, not every detail, but main terms of this possible peace process has to be negotiated, and then they will agree on the declaration of a ceasefire. This is the Russian
Yeah.
perspective, and that blocks the progress. And this is the main reason, I think, for the cancellation of this meeting. But for the European side, I mean, why not they agree on to talk some terms of the peace process without any proposal? They only focus on an immediate ceasefire, and that is the reason that blocks the negotiations and the progress towards peace. So in that case, that brings the question whether the Europeans want this war to continue.
I see. Yeah, General, let's turn to the battlefield, shall we?
Yes, we
What
can.
is, yeah, what is the current situation on the ground in Ukraine?
Uh, Russia wants to advance because one of their main goals is to completely control Donbas region, which is one of the most important areas for several reasons for Russia. Majority of the people in that region are Russian speaking. This area is the industrial center of Ukraine. There are also minerals. This region is very rich in many type of minerals. Russia already has maybe 80 or 85% control of Donbas region. Luhansk part of Donbas is 100% under Russian control now, but the Donetsk part is maybe 70 or 75% under Russian control. So the increased offensive campaign in Pokrovsk region aims first to control the entire Donbas because Pokros is a location which controls many supply routes. It is a hub for reinforcement for supplies, and if that location is completely controlled by Russia, this would make easy for the future operations because the terrain in the west of Pokros region is much more available for uh, armored units operations. In that way, Russia may also seek to advance to Dnipro River. So if the River is aimed by Russia, and if it is possible for them to control that region, that will end up with the total collapse of Ukraine defense.
I see. So most of there are lots of indicators of a new escalation in the region. I wonder, what do recent developments reveal about Russia's military capacity and strategic intent, other than like, is it going to, for instance, after, let's say, invading Ukraine, is it going to be the end for Russia or not? Like, what are the strategic intent in
Uh,
there too?
What I understand from all the statements made by high officials from both sides, Russia will be ready to accept a peace provided that Crimea and Donbas regions are recognized as Russian territory. Uh, Ukraine is not a NATO country. Ukraine remains a neutral state.
Yeah,
There are several other conditions, but these are the main conditions. I don't think Russia is aiming to get the control of other regions in Ukraine. There are
yeah,
some claims that Russia may also target Odessa region. Odessa is a key region. If Ukraine loses Odessa, Ukraine will become a landlocked country because it's the only point at this stage that Ukraine has an access to Black Sea.
yeah.
But this may lead to a reaction from other countries, and this may trigger a further phase for Russia. I don't think that Russia will try to do this at this stage.
General security guarantees for Ukraine are once again a central issue because of the all of the things we have discussed. And there is discussion around EU membership, a coalition of willing forces, or even limitations on Ukraine's armed forces in exchange for peace. Are any of these realistic paths towards stability, or could they risk locking Ukraine into a fragile conditional peace?
So these are some of the conflict points between the Westerns and Russian terms.
Yeah.
Russia not only against for the NATO membership of Ukraine, but also EU membership. EU has a mutual defense system like NATO. So this is also not acceptable, I think, for Russia. In terms of the troop limitations, I think Russia may be flexible on this because if Ukraine remains as a neutral state, Ukraine will not agree, and the West will not agree for the limitations on the Ukrainian armed forces, and Ukraine may not pose a existential threat to Russia alone. For this
Yeah.
reason, this can be maybe a point which the parties can negotiate and find a solution.
Maybe we can continue on the financial side to just like more rigidify this topics in our mind. The EU and also like the another, I believe, a conflict within EU this stands for. So the EU still hasn't reached an agreement on whether to transfer roughly 140 billion euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine, right? Why has this decision stalled, and what does it reveal about Europe's internal divisions, and how might this indecision maybe impact Ukraine's ability to sustain its defense in general?
So it is a remarkable amount of money. $140 billion may sustain Ukraine operations for about at least 2 years. The European leaders thought that they could agree on this, but Belgium rejected. According to Belgium, this is unlawful, according to international law. So the Belgium blocked. I don't know whether it will be possible for European countries to convince Belgium to change their decision or reservation on this point. Uh,
Why Belgium said that this is unlawful?
According to international law, it is unlawful to transfer a country's assets to another country without the consent of that country. I think Belgium's reservation is also about the credibility of Europe.
Yeah, that makes total sense. A general, at the same time, Russia's reaction to the latest sanctions has pushed global oil prices higher, right? How effective are these sanctions today? Do they still meaningfully constrain Russia, or have they evolved into a like mutual pain cycle, one that hurts both Europe and Moscow?
So before the war, the total amount of the Russian exports was about $400 billion. I mean, gas and oil together, I think. After the war, that has dropped to $250 billion. The exports were reduced because of the European countries and Western countries. So roughly their annual income is about 200 or 250 billion, and maybe
Yeah.
50 or 60 billion of this is still coming from Europe. They're going to lose maybe 70 billion or maybe 60 billion more. I don't think that this will be so much influential for Russia to sustain this war. They have their self-sustaining defense industry. They have enough resources to sustain this war, and but this can be a pressure on Russia for other requirements. The people of Russia may face some difficulties because of the sanctions or new sanctions imposed on Russia. Russia has increased its exports to China and India. There's also a growing pressure over India by the United States.
Yeah. General, in our last episode about this conflict, we talked about the hybrid warfare nature of this conflict, Russia-Ukraine conflict. So I was thinking, is it safe to assume that this hybrid warfare tactics are still on the ground? Maybe they're evolving, or like, what are the key indicators should we watch that might signal a shift toward any other way, or, you know,
Uh,
uh,
Indeed, hybrid warfare is carried out by both sides, not only by Russia. I mean, hybrid
yeah.
war has a non-military dimension, and this non-military dimension is carried out by Russia and by Western countries against Russia. So,
Yeah, can you maybe summarize like what are the things actually Russia and Europe did in terms of hybrid warfare tactics in general? Maybe like a quick summary to our audience.
the disruptions over the Western airports, for example, this was presented as Russian hybrid warfare practice against West.
Yeah,
This may be true, we don't know, and the Westerners have not been able to provide evidences that suggest this is carried out by Russia. This can be carried out by different means, by information campaign, for example.
yeah,
Disinformation can be also carried out in the way of intelligence operations. The Westerners provide support to Ukraine For example, when the Ukraine forces target the strategic infrastructure of Russia, this is also advised by Western planners, and this advice is also part of a hybrid strategy of the West against Russia, isn't this? An indirect confrontation mostly can be considered as the implementation of a hybrid war or hybrid strategy.
Yes. Thank you, General. These were all my questions for today's episode. Is there anything you would like to add?
Thank you, Rabia, for hosting me. Uh, we will see, but it seems to me that the escalation will go further for some time. Maybe a couple of months later, the parties will search for ways on how to negotiate on peace. But at least a couple of months, we will see an increase in the tension in Ukraine and Russia war.
Yes, indeed. And since the hybrid warfare nature of this conflict, it is hard to track actually what are the connections and what are the like next things that we're expecting.
So the
So
West, I mean, maybe I should also add this. The West
yeah,
has provided serious support to Ukraine for during the conflict. They provided tanks, missiles. The West
yeah,
has provided aircraft, although not all of them are operational now in Ukraine. Uh, but machines don't fight. The humans still fight. For this
yeah,
reason, it is the Ukrainian people who really fight on the ground, and they have limitations. They have a population of 40 million, and many people have already left Ukraine and live outside the country. Ukraine suffers many losses, face difficulty in sustaining the war in terms of human resource. The West carries out the same strategy. They believe that they can support Ukraine, and in that way, Ukraine can defeat Russia. So I think this is a serious delusion. If the West really wants to defeat Russia, they have to augment Ukraine by military forces. And that brings the issue of a confrontation between NATO and Russia, which will be devastating for both sides. For this reason, providing weapons, providing missiles, aircraft, tanks would never be enough to defeat Russia. I think the West should really understand that this strategy will not bring what they want, but this will prolong the war. And maybe
yeah.
this is what the Europeans want.
General, there was a U.S. decision to send Tomahawks missiles to the Ukraine, but I believe this decision is no longer current, right? What is the reason and what is the reason behind this?
So the final decision, I think, hasn't been made yet by the United States. But on the
Okay.
other side, yes, Tomahawks are effective weapons, but um, how many Tomahawks will Ukraine receive? This is one question. To make a game changer effect, the number of Tomahawks that could be sent by the United States to Ukraine will not be enough. Ukraine is already manufacturing its own strategic missiles, which is almost have an equal range with the Tomahawks on, or even longer than this, but is
Yeah,
not as capable as Tomahawks from some features perspective. They would need, if they really want to make a game changer effect with missiles, they would need thousands of missiles. And
I see.
I think this won't be possible.
Uh, Thank you, General, once again for sharing your valuable insights and perspective with us. And thank you all for watching. We'll continue to follow the evolving dynamics of this crisis. If you find our discussions insightful, don't forget to subscribe and follow our future episodes. So we'll see you in the next episode.